So, before we get rolling with this beautiful panel, Naturally New Orleans, thank you all for being here. I wanted to do my part to support local independent booksellers. So, as you know, Tubby & Coo's Traveling Bookstore is out there. They've got all the festival books, so anything you see on this stage or out there, if there's a book to be published, they probably have it. And then we're also going to be celebrating the fact that we are next door to the oldest Black-owned bookstore in the city. That's Community Book Center. So we make sure that we are also bringing business to them. And we do that by making sure that at every single session we have, we are giving away a $25 Community Book Center gift card. So you can go out there and buy books, and then go over there and buy other books. And just have a fun book buying day. And to do that, we have a randomizer. If you registered for this session, you were automatically entered to win a $25 Community Book Center gift card. The randomizer has drawn Cynthia Bayard. Cynthia? Okay, let's randomize again. Rachel Livanis? Rachel? And one's going twice. All right, let's try it. How about Lucinda Clark? Yay! Hey! All right. I will give this gift card to you in just a second. I can see you're settled in nicely over there. Okay, so this is Naturally New Orleans, 4 New Orleans writers in different genres talking about how the city has shaped their life and work. And to moderate this panel, we have Maurice Carlos Ruffin. I'm going to paraphrase your bio off from memory. Maurice Carlos Ruffin is currently teaching in the creative writing department at LSU. He is a recovering attorney. He has written 3 books, The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You, which was the 2023 One Book, One New Orleans selection. His first book, We Cast a Shadow, and then his latest, The American Daughters, which is the first of a trilogy. So I'm looking forward to the next installment of that. I want to see where these characters go. And on that happy note, I'm going to get out the way and turn this over to Maurice.
That's right, please clap. Clap during that election back in 2016, that's such a deep cut. We have politicians here. Oh, we gotta start with a little music because this is New Orleans. So just relax, take a deep breath. This is not work. How you feeling? Hey, Brad. That's John Baptiste. So, thank you, Mr. Soundman. Today we're gonna have opening discussion. We have 4 amazing writers, and you may notice that each writer is a different genre. We have memoir, we have poetry, we have fiction, we have short stories. And in a minute, we're gonna get a sample of some of their work. But I wanna do 2 things. I wanna properly give the bios of the people who are here, so you know who they are. And then I'm gonna ask my dear friend Larry for like a little anecdote about this neighborhood, this particular location we're talking about. Because we have so many stories to tell. But let me hop in here and get the bios. And in no particular order. A native New Orleanian, Karisma Price, right here. Hello, Karisma, hello. Is an assistant professor of English at Tulane University, a poet and screenwriter. She is the author of I'm Always So Serious, Sarah Band Books 2023, which was a New York Times Editor's Choice pick. Her work has appeared in publications including Poetry, Indiana Review, Academy of American Poets, Poem Day Series, and elsewhere. She is a 2025 Whiting Award winner in poetry, a Cave Canem Fellow, a 2023 Stanley Kunitz Memorial Prize from the American Poetry Review, and was awarded the 2020 J. Howard and Barbara M.J. Wood Prize from the Poetry Foundation. She holds an MFA in poetry from New York University, and she's gonna be bullying me a lot today because we're like twins, we're like baby sister / whatever like that. So we have the same birthday, so we had that in common. Blake, is this Sanz or Sanz? All right, so not like common Sanz, but that's right. Okay. Blake is the author of The Boundaries of Their Dwelling. University of Iowa Press 2021, chosen by Brandon Taylor as the winner of the Iowa Short Fiction Award. You don't know, that's like a huge award, like the White House a huge award. big deal. His work has been published in Georgia Review, Ecotone, the Missouri Review, Joyland, American Short Fiction, and elsewhere. Former fiction editor of the Florida Review. He has received fellowships and scholarships from the Sosopol Fiction Seminars, the Swanee Writers Conference, Gentile Arts Residency, and many other organizations. And we also have the commonality of LSU. We'll get to that a little later too. All right, let's see who's next. It's a surprise to me. Oh, here we go. Another New Orleans native, Larry Bagneris, began his civil rights. Listen closely. This is really incredible to me. It's touched like barely the surface of it. Began his civil rights activism as a student at St. Augustine. I should make fun of that. I'm a 35 person. You know, I got, but it's not.
We always beat you.
Yeah, that's what bullies on both sides of me. I can't help it. I'm surrounded. He graduated from Xavier University of Louisiana and moved to Houston, Texas, where he was a two-term president of the city's gay political caucus, chairperson of Gay Pride Week, and in 1979, founder of Houston's Gay Pride Parade. Bagneris returned to New Orleans in the 1990s and became a lobbyist for the No AIDS Task Force, which put you in, unfortunately, Baton Rouge for a period of time. We'll get to that a little bit later. Because somebody spends too much time there nowadays. All right. He served for mayoral administration as executive director of the New Orleans Human Relations Commission before retiring in 2018 at the age of 25. Is when you retired?
Thank you for the compliment.
We'll get to that too a little bit more. And also my dear friend Ambata Kazi is a writer and editor, teacher born and raised here in the city of New Orleans. She earned a Master of Arts in English and a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from the University of New Orleans. Her first novel, a fantastic book called Far Away From Here, was published by Spark Press this year in August. She is the senior editor of, is it Sapello? It's Sapello Square, an online multidisciplinary journal that centers Black Muslim histories and contemporary realities. We go way back to being in a writing group a long time ago. We'll get to that a little bit later as well. All right, so I promised a little bit of a scoop because Mr. Bagneris, he knows things like firsthand that to me I've heard about. And this neighborhood was not quite like this. If you were walking in, you might have seen, like, even in the concrete, like Black Bayou, or like written on signs and like handwritten lettering, Black Bayou. But this was not quite Black Bayou when you were a youngster, back in the 1990s. But please, open the, is that mic working? I'm sorry. We're good over here, great. We can pass these back and forth throughout the presentation. There we go.
In the 60s.
No.
Oh, sorry. This whole hosting thing, I tell you. No, so I was going to ask you about, you were talking to Blake and I about how when you walked in here, you were reminded about how back in the day, you couldn't even sit beyond the back of this church.
No, I was telling someone that Miss Hope, I was telling her that walking up those steps brought me back to the pressure I put on myself as a gay man in the church of what it's done to me in terms of what it did to me, because it doesn't do that anymore. Tormenting myself. We would do the 9 churches, and part of those 9 churches was this church, St. Anne's Church, that doesn't exist, Corpus Christi Epiphany, was our parishes. But anybody Black that came into this church, you'd have to sit in the back. And it was funny because one day we went into St. Anne's and we light-skinned, so all the parishioners called us in front, me and my sister and brother. And when my darker-skinned cousins came in, we said, come on up front. And Usher said, no, y'all need to go in the back. But segregation was rampant growing up, racism was rampant, and that's what I grew up with. I'll tell you a story about that later on, how my mother took care of me. And let me mention early on, I was deaf from birth in my left ear, but my mother saved me because she said to me, when the doctor said that at 8 years old I was deaf, she called me outside the doctor's office and she said, there is, and this is her word, there isn't a damn thing wrong with you. You hear what the heck you want to hear. And that saved me from going to special classes and having a personality that I wouldn't have today if I'd been put into a special class. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm just grateful for my mom.
God bless the mothers. All right, so I want to start off by having each of the authors here do a short reading from their work. We're going to start with Blake, and then we'll hop around. So Blake, This is going to sort of introduce a bit of a thread that we know New Orleans has, which is humor. You know, it's hard to live in the city and not be a little bit perplexed by some of the things that make this place very strange. But I really love this short story. You want to set this story up for us? Like, what's it about? Just like
Hey, yeah, happy to do that. It's funny to read this story at a panel of celebrating New Orleans because it's not set here. But what it has to do with is, as a writer for me, was the possibility of writing a place that I didn't know and writing into the not knowing. That is to say, this is set in Miami Beach, a place I don't know well. But just a quick setup for the story. These two Mexican teens have won a prize to film a reality show for Univision in Miami Beach. And so that's their first experience of this country, is that scene. This is based a little bit on the story of my sister, my half-sister that I didn't meet until I was an adult, who told me that this was, in fact, something like her first experience of this country. So with that, I'll just give you a little taste of the story, which is called Hablamos, which is the fake name of the fake reality show. The first time Emmy and Frida traveled to the US, it was to appear as paid participants on a Jerry Springer-style Spanish-language talk show filmed in Miami. Hablamos, Univision called it. Emmy hadn't known anything about it until one day when Frida came screaming into their shared bedroom. "We won," she yelled. "Won what?" Emmy replied. On a lark, Frida had entered them both into a expenses-paid 3-day trip to film an episode of Hablamos. "Wow," Emmy said, "okay." That summer, Americans listened like classic gringos to Livin' La Vida Loca, and Emmy and Frida, her best friend, sang it aloud on the flight from Mexico City. They mimicked dancing girls from the video as Frida belted out the silly words, "She will wear you out." The panzon beside them pretended not to be bothered. Emmy wasn't surprised to notice how Frida's perfect freaking figure undercut his annoyance. An airport shuttle picked them up and ushered them alongside the Dolphin Expressway past downtown and over the MacArthur Causeway to South Beach. As it eased along the main drag, skyscraper glass angled the sun down at them with a fierceness the smog of Mexico City never allowed. Gaps between buildings provided snippets of ocean views where tanned men on jet skis carved out sea foam from the green Atlantic. Lines of yachts floated in perfect rows behind them. A boardwalk teemed with half-naked white people desperate to be brown. I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. And throughout the book, the language is so amazing. There's definitely another sort of thread today. Yeah. Okay, so Ambata, it's good to see you here today. So our history is that we were involved in a local writers group called the Young Lady Writers of New Orleans, which was composed of people of color, and it was always amazing to see you create things and hear you express them as part of the group. Reading your book, I can just tell you that there were so many things that resonated with me, though my profile, not your profile. But I just want you just to share with the audience here. Could you read for a few minutes from whatever part you want to read from?
Tahani drove away from Mama Taiba and Baba Kareem's home feeling distressed. The nerve of Fatima, showing up, smiling, acting like nothing had ever happened. Well, after she got over the shock of how Tahani looked, how she had changed. A shock Fatima tried to conceal, but too late. Her eyes growing wide, then blinking several times before they settled on a spot over Tahani's shoulder. Tahani had stuck her chin out to Fatima, leveling her eyes, the defiant posture she'd perfected over the last 5 years when anyone questioned her about how she was living her life. She turned the music and the ends of her were curled back and forth over her collarbone, making her feel briefly young and carefree, not a bone-tired single mom going to pick up her kids. How dare Fatima come home and act all nonchalant, like she hadn't left and stopped calling shortly after the storm, asking Tahani questions about what she'd been up to, like it was all perfectly normal, like they'd never been close friends. But okay, had they been really? Sure, they spent a lot of time together, so accustomed to each other's houses, they could walk around with their eyes shut, one of their favorite games, and not hit a wall. But she couldn't recall them ever sharing secrets or anything deep like that. They just always hung together. They'd known each other all their lives. What secrets did they even have? Their lives then had been open doors. Tahani remembered when Wakil started courting Fatima. She'd been as excited as Fatima was when he came back, seeing the two of them together picking back up seamlessly, like two separate puzzle pieces finally finding each other. Some things just looked right together, and that was Fatima and Wakil. They had the same dark brown skin color and tallish, slim bodies, but it was more than just the physical resemblance. Some couples you could just look at and see their whole lives play out in the smiles they shared, the way they set their eyes on each other like no one else was around. Tahani couldn't recall any special moments with her and Wakil, but he was a fixture of her childhood, always so easy to get along with. He knew everybody and everybody knew him. Tahani remembered how the elders' faces lit up whenever Wakil came around. He was a promise of the future, a sign that everything was going to be okay. And then he was gone, snuffed out. Tahani knew it wasn't right, that Allah never took a soul as punishment, that every life taken held a lesson for the living, a purpose. But still she asked sometimes, why Wakil? They were all so hurt by it. And then Fatima just picked up and left, like only she had lost somebody, like they weren't all hurting. Tahani breathed again under her breath at the magically returned Fatima, and had the nerve to act pious on some benevolent air. Tahani didn't trust it. There was something behind the serene smiles and vague alhamdulillahs about her own life in Atlanta. Fatima was hiding something.
Thank you so much. I really, as an author, I love when I read somebody else's book and I can see what readers have said about it. And so I just love just the beauty of it. So this is what one of the things I saw. Somebody described about this book as, it was like sitting on my couch with a girlfriend, listening to a whirlwind story about a place, New Orleans, I've always wanted to visit, that feels mythical and mystical because of its history and folklore. But it's grounded in reality by how diverse and black, all caps, it is. And those three characters, Fatima and Said, they're amazing characters because they all seem so different, but you made these characters yourself. So that's just a taste of that. I will say these books are all available right out there. It's being sold by Tubman Coos. So if you like what you hear, I'm sure you do, make sure you get a copy or get several. I did an event last year somewhere and said about like a box full, and I was like, okay, Larry, I appreciate that. I'm not gonna haunt you in the future. All right, so Larry, would you do us the pleasure of reading a short bit from your work?
Yeah, you can tell the difference in the age group. Everybody's reading from their phone. I haven't picked up that hobby yet, but I've shortened it because I realized we don't have a lot of time to read a whole half chapter. On the eve of the 2022 Pride Parade, Harrison, this friend of mine who I had met and put together a lot of things, he's really the person that brought me back to life in terms of Houston and people realizing an African American had formed the first Pride Parade. Harrison put together a lavish dinner party and reception. We call it Bagneris, the Bagneris Ball, on the 35th floor of the Houston Petroleum Club at 1201 Louisiana Avenue. Harrison attended to every detail, the decorations, invitation, audio, dining, trophies, to regale the black-tie crowd celebrating the 45th anniversary of the Houston Pride Parade. The next day, there I was standing in the back of a Jeep on a 103-degree day, riding with two of my best friends, Ryan, who had brought a dozen beads from New Orleans, a dozen bag of beads from New Orleans, and Randy, my friend, who had flown in from New York to attend the ball and the festivity. In the excitement of the lineup, we only found Harrison at the last minute. We handed him a sack of beads, he hopped on, we told him to throw, throw, throw. Everything my work has been to design to promote inclusion. As the crowd began to beg for beads, I held up a handmade sign. It's now night parade because it's too hot to parade in the daytime. Decorated with strings of lights, letters of construction paper made lovingly by my two best friends, Raymond and David, exhorting the crowd to all vote Democrat. It wasn't much, but I was still devoting all I can to turn my beloved Texas as blue as it was when I left in 1986. Playing in my head was Whitney Houston's song, The Greatest Love of All, which I hope every one of you have a chance to listen to. When I organized the spot park fireworks after my parades, I would always start with the Star Spangled Banner and end with We Are Family. The tearjerker was always The Greatest Love of All, George Benson's original version back in the day. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. The song teaches us to love ourselves. As Harvey Milk told us, to come out of the closet because our queerness is the special ingredient that ties us all together. Show them the beauty they possess inside. As I looked upon the crowd on that hot Houston day in 2022, I hope today's queers would never need to consider, as I had, the political ramification of playing this song in public at a gay event. Give them a sense of pride. Make it easier. In those days, I had my boyfriend Jimmy edit out the word children out of the song and we used it in fireworks bits because I didn't want to draw any controversy. May those days be forever gone. Let the children's laughter remind us of how we used to be. In the Jeep rolling through the canyons of downtown Houston, 50-story building, I looked across the multiracial crowd. My dream had come true. Every bit of what I began to wish in New Orleans, I had put together in Houston, and it had taken on a life of its own. Our protest is indeed a celebration of our perfect gay lives.
Thank you so much. Two things there, Larry. So this is somebody who really has walked in history. Like when Larry mentions Harvey Milk, who I'm sure most of you know who Harvey Milk is, there's a picture of Larry with Harvey Milk in 1978. And the book is full of these kind of photos. Another one is he's making fun of us so-called young whippersnappers, but I told him this when he walked in. So most of the photos in the book, there's many photos, are historical photos. So I came across this picture of Larry in China, and he looks so young there. I'm like, he's like what, 30, maybe 35. It's about 5 years ago. And I don't look that good. So it's just not fair, Larry. It's just not fair. All right, I do want to go next to my twin, my dear twin, Karisma, who, you want to see?
I said, hey.
All right, okay. If you've not yet had a chance, can we show the cover? If you've not had a chance yet to read anything from this book, some things are available online, but really, you should read the entire book to get what's going on here. I know I'm biased as, twin brother, whatever like that, but this is an astounding book. And it won the Writing Prize, which my twin chided me for. I said, it's the biggest prize in the world. She's like, it ain't that big. I'm like,
Well, I didn't say it wasn't that big. I said it's not the biggest prize in the world, but it's nice.
Y'all know.
Thank you for the
Y'all know. See what I got to deal with over here? I can't.
Thank you for the money.
Exactly. All right, so I'm going to lay it over to you. Please give us some of that sauce.
Okay, any special poem you want to read?
I did mark some in my copy. I didn't want to.
Oh, she can, right?
See, when I try and boss her around, she get all whatever. So,
How y'all doing? How's everybody?
everybody doing all right? I mean, I know I marked. Yeah, I know I marked the Booker one, and I marked the first one was the Tell.
Okay, so I guess I'll read what 3 poems. That's about the prose. So a lot of my book, like Maurice said, born and raised here. So a lot of the book talks about, my childhood before and after Katrina. So this is a Katrina poem. I write sad poems. I'm sorry. So this is called Things That Hold. My father's voice after the cancer had spread. A flip phone, a flag. George Bush's hands as he pauses his vacation briefly for thoughts and prayers. My body next to the potted plant after my father throws the wooden chair. The cheaply made chair. A small stack of clothes. A birthday card. Mobertha Hendricks under the American flag 2 days after Hurricane Katrina. Her face from the crease made in her obituary photo as we used the newspaper to eat crawfish. The wrinkles in her forehead. Floodwater passing through a broken levee. My uncle's hands retaping the attic windows after the floodwater rises. My cousins sleeping in the attic because no neighbor has a rescue boat. Black people in distress. They lay prostrate and call it prayer. The blankets on my cousin's shoulders days later when rescued. The National Guard smile as he carries the neighbor's dog from the flooded living room. The dog's body around his neck, an upside down flag.
Brad, that's probably right. Finger snaps. And Allison, we have amazing poets out here in the audience as well.
So raise your hand if you know who James Booker was. All right, James Booker was described by Dr. John as the best gay one-eyed piano player to ever come from New Orleans. He was a fantastic piano player. He taught Dr. John how to play the bass after Dr. John got shot in the pinky. He taught Dr. John how to play the organ after he got shot in the pinky because Dr. John used to play bass, but after he got shot, he couldn't get his pinky anymore, so he showed him how to play the organ. He tutored a young Harry Connick Jr. at the piano. Harry Connick Sr., as we know, was the district attorney at the time. James Booker got into, he suffered a lot with, he was living with mental health and drug addiction, so there were some times where, you tutor little Harry at the piano, maybe a charge or two goes away. But even if you like today, if you watch Harry Connick Jr.'s hands on the piano, they mimic James Booker very closely in a loving way. So even if you don't know who James Booker is, you probably saw him or seen him around the city in murals. He is the guy that has an afro and an eye patch on his left eye. So he was a big myth of a man. He would say everything like, oh, Ringo Starr's bodyguard took my eye, this happened. But he actually did work with Ringo Starr and the Beatles. He worked with Aretha Franklin, James Brown, everyone that came in through the Dewdrop Inn. He emancipated himself with his parents' permission from his parents, so he was a prodigy. He could go on tour as a teenager. So I thought about this because he was such a myth of a man. What if Ringo Starr's bodyguard actually did take his eye? So this is a persona poem in the voice of James Booker. James Booker speaks to Ringo Starr about his bodyguard taking his eye. You made a stranger perform your own tantrum. Don't be embarrassed. I'm still here. Where I am from, a man is judged if he cannot finish what he started, so finish me. Show me how you fight, and I'll show you how to possess Chopin and turn him into something darker than his own shadow. Little Lazarus, why wasn't it you who yanked the song out of me? I blessed the bloody knuckle with the percussion you could not make. The fist that was not yours formed into a furious tune. A fat flounder forcing its living against the brown swamp of my face. You made sure I was open properly. If you were a real man, you would have let me feed your hunger in an easier way. Would have let me teach you Fats Domino with one hand held over my gaping left socket while the other hand danced among the ivories. Instructor of the obedient, I see you. We both call others to move for us. Both own heavy hands that draw blood from the objects we wish to be. I think I'm gonna stop there. I talked a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. What's cool about that is I got to hear what you were doing research for that. I remember you were going maybe to libraries or going online, something like that, and you were sort of expanding your process. And I was like, oh, this is how poets work. You're crazy, man. But it makes you a wonderful poet. Okay, I want to start by opening it up with a sort of broad question. The call of the question today is how has New Orleans influenced or affected people who are either from here, born and raised, or have deep connections here. And so I'm going to open up with that very general question, answer however you want to. And because Larry quoted Whitney Houston, I'll be the children of the future, so we're going to start with you on this question.
Like you said, it's going to open open it up and then force me to start.
You have the microphone.
So you said, repeat the question one more time.
Just how has New Orleans influenced you as a poet and a writer?
It's mostly all I write about. Being born and raised here is really fun. I went to college and grad school in New York, so for my 18th birthday, my mom mailed me a king cake, and I had to explain to my friends in the dorm like what a king cake was, and like you don't want the baby inside because you have to buy it. So I feel like I don't know, we have so much culture and a general, not to be stereotypical, but like a jazziness to us. In addition to the jazz music, I feel like there's so many like artistic people and creative people here, even if they don't work in the arts. I feel like New Orleans is a place for creatives and people who are just, who want to experience life. Like, think about, you know, the second line. Second line and have jazz funeral, you know, for weddings, funerals, like, it's a place to store all the emotions. It doesn't have to be a place where you have to just be happy. You can be doing something beautiful and brilliant, and you have a full range of emotion. So I feel like as a writer, that's influenced me because, you know, especially, you know, living in New York for 6 years, it was really fun. But, you know, I mean, my classmates aren't here, so I can say that. But like in class, they're trying to write these New York poems. They're trying to transform themselves into like New Yorkers. And I was very much like, I am proudly from the South. I am New Orleanian. So a lot of my poems were about my family, my upbringing. So I feel like being away from New Orleans gave me the distance to write about it, using memory as a tool, because sometimes now that I've moved back, when I'm writing about something, even though it can be right outside my window, it's harder to write about. So I feel like using memory as a creative tool is helpful, but I just feel like some artists, we don't always get the same respect as Southern artists as other, you know, writers from the North or the East Coast or the West Coast get, and I just think there's, you know, it's just a lot of like cultural exchange here. So I don't know, I just feel really lucky to be from here, and we have a lot of cool traditions that confuse a lot of people, but it makes sense to us.
And that's exactly how she won the biggest prize in poetry in the world. Can you talk about your experience as a native, but also, you know, as a Black Muslim woman as well? You know, I was bringing my mother on errands today, and I brought her to the doctor, and she went to the gas station, and there was a woman who, you know, could be like your cousin. Like, she had the earrings, she had the hair wrap. My mother was like, I know people from this community are here, but I rarely see them in this part of the city. We had a little discussion about that. She's older, you know. So I'm like, Mom, he's like, you know, honestly, all these people here, obviously it's diversity. But I do feel like sometimes when New Orleans is presented, like you were saying, there's these stereotypes about what the South is. Like we're jazzy, or there's like, when Stu playing trumpet. There's a lot of that, but there's a lot of everybody here in this community. So maybe you can speak to that experience a little bit too.
Okay. Yeah. That was weird. Yeah, for me, I had a similar experience as Karisma. Like, when I started writing the book, I was living in Connecticut, and that was my first time living, you know, away from home. And so I had this idea, like, for like a book, you know, or how I was going to be as a writer. And New Orleans wasn't really there. Like, I had that thought of like, oh, if I'm going to be a serious writer, I can't write about the South, you know. But being there, the homesickness, you know, somewhere, a place where people didn't know about, you know, New Orleans outside of like the tourism and whatnot, that pride came in me, and the homesickness, I was just really missing home and just thinking about everything that had shaped me as a person, like the community that I came from. And so that's just how it came about for me in writing this book, was that it was a way for me to like tap into what I was missing, family, friends, and the community that I had, you know, had raised me, and my faith community. And so it was like a way to like hear their voices and like, you know, just kind of get that comfort that I wasn't getting, you know. And just for me, it really opened up just like an appreciation of where I come from, the culture, and the closeness, you know, things that I didn't always appreciate. You know, I kind of wanted to be independent, and I kind of felt like those things held me back, and then realized like, no, these things make me who I am, you know. And I call it like my love letter. Like, I was writing to New Orleans and just everything that I knew. And like, I think too, for me, like my experience, like growing up in the 7th Ward and, you know, going out to New Orleans East, like that was the New Orleans I knew. We hardly ever went to like the French Quarter or anything like that. That was kind of foreign growing up. So to write about like the areas that I knew that I could still see, even though I wasn't physically there, it was like just really, I don't know what the word for it is, but like just affirming like where I came from and like the richness of that and in the ordinariness of it, you know, and missing that and how things had changed, you know, since Katrina. So all of that was just, you know, playing a factor in writing that story, yeah.
Thank you. And I do want to give a shout out to Dr. Megan Holt, who has put this all together. I can't tell if she's in it, maybe not. But let's give a big hand to her. Megan put it outside the home. Involved in it, but she does so much work on her own, so I just want to give her thanks for that. And so Blake has several points of connection. I know that one of our things that we're both LSU people, as it were. Can you talk about that connection and other connections you have to this area?
Sure. So I do feel like a poser on this panel because don't hate me. I'm from Baton Rouge. But I had a lot of family here, so as a kid I was back and forth between here and Baton Rouge a lot, and half my family is from Mexico. So there's just a lot of my upbringing was wishing that I was either here or Mexico City.
But can you talk about why you look to those other places rather than Baton Rouge?
Well, y'all know why I didn't look to Baton Rouge.
These specifics, pal.
You know, it's so easy to rag on Baton Rouge.
I always say Baton Rouge is like an attic. There's nothing up there.
But yeah, you're right. I did teach there many years ago as an instructor in the English department and got a little embroiled in that scene. But this idea of being an outsider and always wanting to be New Orleanian and knowing that I never would be, because of course you can only be New Orleanian if you were born here. You get that? But I went to Loyola for my undergrad, and ever since then, I mean, those first years at Loyola were really the first years that I felt like myself, and so I equate my own coming into being or becoming with coming here. And there hasn't been a single, I've lived all over the country and the world since then, but I never go a year without being here for as long as I can possibly be here. I'm technically supposed to be somewhere else right now. And I'm gonna be here for a month, starting in mid-December. So that's been the cycle of my life, is to always return here. And there's a longing that comes with that that's melancholy and silly. So I write about it a lot, but also because I've done that for so long and I've seen the iterations of the city over time, I recognize that to write about New Orleans is to write about New Orleans at a certain time. You're talking about, you know, pre and post Katrina, and how I remember I wrote a hurricane story in like 2003, and nobody wanted it, and then the hurricane happened, and I had to rewrite the story because it wasn't the same. I wasn't memorializing the same city anymore. And so I think that if we're going to talk about what it means to write about a place, specifically New Orleans, maybe in this case, you have to think about time as well as place. Because New Orleans is not the same place as it used to be, and yet in some weird ways it is. And that's the magic of a place like this, I think.
Thank you. So, Larry, I have several ways I'd like you to think about this question. So, first of all, look, what am I going to say next? All right, how many generations back did your family go in this city? Is it like 8? I think you said in the book.
It's 4, actually.
4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, one of the reasons why I put Creole on the front of the book, I began to understand what that meant because everybody thought I was a Mexican. I had plenty of hair in my youth. And they would call me a Mexican in Houston, so when I started looking into the book, I started looking at my family's heritage. On my mom's side, it's Guatemala and Honduras. On my dad's side, it's French. My grandfather was from Haiti, and my grandmother was from France. They fell in love, they spoke French, and the other one spoke Spanish, and I didn't speak anything because I was trying to keep up with being deaf.
Well, you learned to read lips really early. That was part of your process. Now, Blake said something very interesting. Can somebody come to New Orleans and become a New Orleanian? Is that possible?
They do it all the time.
They do it all
One
the
of the joys I had was bringing my friends from Houston to the Zulu Ball or to the parade or all the things that were going on. And I said in the book, I was trying to prove to my family that I was gay, but my friends were just as normal as everybody else. And they knew how to act. We could cut up outside of the house, but you dare not do that in front of my mom and dad, which was fun camping stuff. And so it was kind to bring them there. And then it dawned on me while I was in Houston that the way to make the movement, I've always been a civil rights worker. At 16, I was picketing in front of Maison Blanche. And that's when it came to me about, well, maybe there'll be a movement for this thing I was going through being gay. Because a psychiatrist had told me that he could help me and he could give me a shock treatment program. But that means it would burn my brain. And all those prayers I've been praying for in my damn churches came to me quickly, and I said, you can stick that up your butt. And I walked out of the office. But I saved myself. So the prayers worked. But the idea was to encourage my parents to see me as okay by seeing my friends and introducing them to our culture. I love the king cake idea because my first year away, I was frantic trying to find a king cake. I forgot that I left it on the table at my house for Christmas. And my mom had gotten the cake, and I'm running all over Houston. Nobody knew what the hell a king cake was. But years later, they started doing king cake. But I love that story, because we all go through the same thing.
Larry, this is for you also. And, I said there's so many amazing photos in here. I mean, talk about OGs. There's pictures of you at Stonewall. Like, I think you were at the Stonewall Inn. I actually lost
That's not the Stonewall picture, that's Dallas.
No, Dallas. You like Pharrell who made Happy. I showed my mother your picture today, and she was like, that's a handsome man. No, true story. What I really wanted to ask you was this. In the acknowledgments, and this is shifting to the next question, and in about 10 minutes, I'm going to open up to audience questions, and just be thinking about things you want to ask the panelists here. Keep in mind, you want questions, not commentary, that sort of thing. Time is always short, of course. But, Larry, in all places, in the acknowledgments, you have this, I'll just read it for you. My second home will always remain Houston, Texas, which allowed me to build an affluent life with larger opportunities than New Orleans could offer. Now, I think that a lot of us who have these New Orleans roots or connections have to contend with the idea of opportunities that are past the border of New Orleans. And one of my favorite books of all time is John Kennedy Toole's Progressive Nonsense, and Ignatius, if you have not read that book, he just hates the idea of like going past the swamp to Baton Rouge or anywhere where the savages live at. But obviously a big part of your life has been in Houston, and I'm going to open to the panel. Can we talk about the actual challenges of the New Orleans life, or trying to make a life, and the choices we have to make to either be here or be somewhere else? Maybe you can lead us into that.
Actually, it wasn't a challenge because I was home almost every weekend. The first two, they had just finished the interstate, and I was flying back and forth on the interstate.
Is that 1930?
No, that was 1970 to 78. They just finished the interstate. For you young people, they didn't start building it until the 60s. But no, it wasn't a challenge. It was a pleasure to take my culture and expose it. And what I did was, I had so many friends of color. I had Mexican friends. It amazed me. How do you compare Mexico City with Baton Rouge? That's impossible. But they would take me to Mexico. One of my first trips was to Mexico. And I found that people just adored me because they thought I was Mexican. And my dad said to me one time, he said, son, you know you're not Mexican, don't you? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you got Mexican food? I said, my friends are Mexican. But I had African-American friends, I had black friends, I had Asian friends. I formed a group called the Gay Chicano Caucus to break up the white boy thing with the movement. And they had to let me in and become vice president. And that's the way I maneuvered my way into politics in Houston, was by taking my diverse friends and bringing them to the Gay Political Caucus meeting. So it was a celebration for me. I took this idea of celebration my whole life. But that's the way my family was, being so multicultural. I can't understand why people on the hate button these days. Nah, dude, and that's why I script everything I say. 'Cause the minute I start thinking about the hate, I think about the man in the White House.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, but that's my answer.
And just to be correct, this is the picture of Larry at the Stonewall Inn. I think like a month before the police.
The May of the same year, I was,
Yeah.
4 weeks before.
That's incredible.
And it was magical because I'd been only in gay bars in New Orleans and they were a bit seedy. And I told that to a professor crying. And he said, you need to see New York. So when you graduate from college, we'll go to New York City. And we were at a bar and it was an older bunch of people and everybody saying, you need to be around the corner at the Stonewall. Can I tell a short story about the Stonewall?
Please.
I was in the Stonewall bar, I walked in and I fell in love with this young man. And we seemed to complement each other quite well. And we were dancing. And all of a sudden, you see those lights up right there? It was a nice moody bar. Well, all these lights came on. And he grabbed me by the hand. And he said, follow me, follow me. I said, why? He said, just follow me and follow me. And we get to the bathroom. He's telling me to climb out the bathroom window. He said, it's a raid. I didn't know what a raid was. I knew they had raids in New Orleans, but I avoided that. And I started crying. And he said, what's wrong with you? I said, this is like West Side Story. For me, it was like West Side Story. And it was a wonderful experience, even though it was a bad experience. If I would have been caught, that's when I transferred my energy to the gay rights movement, because even if I got a job as an African American, if I would have been caught in that bar, my life would have been ruined.
Yeah.
I went to Catholic school, all my friends were Catholic, the church didn't know I was gay, none of my friends knew I was. I would have been completely ruined. So.
And the book is full of those kind of incidents. I mean, that's your life story. You're like Forrest Gump. You were like in all these places.
I'm probably 79 years old.
I can't believe it. Blake, you want to hop in on this conversation about this location versus the challenges? Take the mic there. Thank you, Larry.
This location versus.
Well, I mean, this idea of like New Orleans. I mean, outsiders are like Deep South, New Orleans. The 50th state in education. All these different things. Do you ever see it as a challenge, or do you see it more as like something else?
It's just what comes naturally. It's the place that I find myself thinking about. I'm reminded a little bit now of this interview with this writer I really like named Lori Moore. And there was a question they asked her, like, why are your stories so funny? And her answer was, well, I think a lot of what happens in the world is just funny. And I think that the way that I approach writing about New Orleans is just like, that's what's on my mind. And so the stories that I write are often set there or Mexico, as it turns out for me. Specific to New Orleans, I feel like there's just the set of concerns that exist here, the set of conflicts and tensions remain and have always been for me a combination of familiar and strange. It's never made sense to me, and yet it's always made sense to me. And somehow I like to write into that tension as a writer. I'm always looking for those sources of tension.
Thank you. And I meant to mention earlier, in my research and reading Blake's book, what came up so many times, not just the writing, but the cover, one of the most amazing covers. I know it's probably hard to see in the distance with the big lights going, but it is a really gorgeous cover. And one of your readers was like, they say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but in this case, you totally should. We're right about that. Yeah. Okay, so do you want to comment about, I don't know whether being a poet in this city is a challenge, or whether going out, coming back, showed you things that made it more challenging. How do you want to approach the question of the challenge of our home as a writer?
That's a big question. I don't really know how to answer. It's great being a poet from here and living here and writing about it. I do feel like, I don't know, Megan's still not in the room, but again, shout out to Megan, having festivals and things like this, because one thing I do kind of miss about New York is there was always like a reading going on, and there are wonderful readings here too. The thing I like about being a New Orleans poet is that the community is so supportive. Everyone you know, again, born and raised here, but when I had my book launch, I moved back to New Orleans for maybe like 2 years right before, and then so many poets who I had met before, so many who I didn't even meet were there, and it's just like this abundance of love and support. So I do really appreciate that. I feel like we're much friendlier in the South. Even when we're meeting, we're friendlier. We'll probably say a slick phrase, but it's like, you know what, that was impressive.
It's true. I mean, you're so mean.
You know, like
it's so
it's
nice
like
to meet
you're
you,
one,
so.
like you're one piece short of a chess set. You know, like that. That takes skill to diss a person like that. Like the lights are on one side. But I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Yeah. That was good. That was great.
I mean, maybe that wasn't all I wanted to say. Can you repeat the question?
See, this is what I got to do with it. The question was, what are the challenges, either creatively or financial? Because as I mentioned, Larry mentioned when he goes to Houston, there's sort of financial opportunities to build a stable life. And, it's not always the same way here in Tennessee, New Orleans.
Yeah, I will say one thing. I feel like because people see me as a New Orleans writer, I don't necessarily get invited to a lot of things outside of the South, and I don't know why that is. Like, even though, yes, I'm very proud to be from New Orleans, I'm still a poet. I would like to engage in conversations with other poets, and, like Maurice said, in April, I won the Whiting Award, which is a really big deal, but my life, thank you for the money, the Whiting Foundation, but it didn't really, I wasn't expecting it to, blow up my career and make it this big thing, but it's just like, it stayed pretty, same. So it will be nice to engage with writers everywhere. I love my Southern writers, but maybe to bring some other writers in to see how we live and just to be in conversation. Because a lot of the poets that I like, some of which are from the South, but some of which don't live in the South anymore. Some who live in New York, some who live in Ohio, some who live in California, some who live in Arkansas. So I think it would just be good to have community all around in addition to regional community.
Thank you. No, I think it's absolutely real. I think there's something about, sometimes, I remember last year, this is a little bit too much inside baseball, but you're looking at much writers, so, why not? I remember last year, it was 2 years ago, there's this thing called the Guggenheim Prize. Writers always trying to...
Mic's out.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Writers always trying to find grants to sustain ourselves, because if you don't have any money, you don't have any time. You're trying to, wait tables or be in bars as a bartender. But I remember a couple years ago, a lot of us in the South especially got weirded out because this major award that's for everybody in America, almost everybody who won was from New York City. It was New York, 2 Californians, 1 guy from Iowa, not you, and that was it. How is that? What's going on? So that's one of the challenges. But as you were saying, people here are so kind. Big Brother Kiss and Lehman, he's always reaching out and trying to pull people up and along. Justin Ward, people like that, always trying to do those kind of things. But it can be a challenge, so it's something that I think we deal with as writers here. Ambata, you have anything you want to add to it?
It's a big question, but I've lived in a couple of different places, and that, I appreciate having had that experience to be away from New Orleans to appreciate it. But I think, and for all its challenges, I've also seen how every place you go has its challenges. So it's kind of why don't I be somewhere where I'm comfortable and where my roots are, and so it's a weird thing when I come to New Orleans, because I'm not living here right now, and just the feeling in my body, I'm home, and it's not the safest place. There's all these issues, but I'm I feel so comfortable, and I don't feel that anywhere else. And then I came to visit one time last year, and sitting on the bayou eating a po' boy, and the guy just starts talking oh, you eating a po' boy, and it's but I was no one does that anywhere else. In California, in Connecticut, in Washington State, these are all places I've lived, and it's you can't talk to people there, you can't just chat, and to be able to do that. And so I feel creatively being here, so it may be a challenge to live here, but also just what that does for my creativity when I'm somewhere where I can talk to people, and people have a genuine interest, sometimes too much interest in New Orleans, right? But it's people have a genuine interest in you, and having having had different experiences in different places, it definitely makes me appreciate New Orleans, and how we are with each other, because it's like, yes, we're like the nicest, meanest people, you know.
Killing with kindness. So, my note on my phone, but I couldn't help, the New York Times was like just throwing notifications at me constantly. So, related but unrelated, we've gotten word that ICE is coming, right? So everybody be aware of that, probably tomorrow, But at the same time, they just had a notification saying that the Supreme Court has ruled that the deployment of ICE or National Guard troops in DC was unlawful and unconstitutional. So that may stop it here, but I don't know. So just, your P's and Q's. Just watch out, everybody. Just be safe out there. On that note, it's hard to describe this. I want to go into the audience questions in a moment, but in reading everybody's work, and going through the text of even though it's different genres, different time periods, different stories that are being told, there's something about the work that is like, what's a fancy word? It's ineffably New Orleanian. The voice, the spirit, the vibe, the humor, there's just something that's really lovely in all the pieces. I just want to briefly have everybody touch on like your craft. Like how, when you're sitting up to write, what are you thinking about? So for example, Ambata, with your three main characters, each one of them are Muslims. And yet, the way they approach religion is different. I think, for example, Tahani, to some, she seems like she's a failed Muslim. Like she has these two children out of wedlock, and she's still very faithful. You have Fatima, who is, she feels both inside and outside. She's trying to work her way back into it. The young man, he feels like he's sort of made a mistake in the past and has been kind of eating at them. And you're doing some really amazing things. And I feel like in some places, like Baton Rouge, for example, not looking at Blake, sorry. But like, everything's like so black and white. Whereas here in New Orleans, it's like there's all these, this spectrum, or this gradation. So maybe that helps you talk about how did you write these characters, how did you write the voice, how did you get this feeling of this like real complexity or nuance?
Well, so it started out with just Fatima, and then it opened up to the three characters. And so there was, for me, it was just like getting into the different like headspace of these different characters. It helped to have them in different settings, right? Like Fatima is mostly like in the 7th Ward, which is where I grew up, and so there's that more community element. Tahani is kind of, she goes around different parts of the city. She's into like beautiful things, so she's, more so attacked, looking at those type of things. And then for Safe, with the life that he's living, he's like in the outskirts, right? Way out in New Orleans East and the 9th Ward and all these places where people don't go, right? And so that kind of shadowy life. And so the setting was really helpful for me to like get into like their different lives. So like, they were very distinct in that sense. And I did things like listening to music, like thinking about like what types of music each character would like, and that helped me to kind of like get into their world. So it was just, I would say mostly though, it was the settings that helped me to, think about how that informed their character and their lifestyles.
Thank you. And in the audience, I know we have some writers. If you are a writer or a poet or an aspiring writer, please raise your hand just for our elucidation. Anybody? I know you're a writer. I mean, not raising your hand. Quite a few writers out there, so sorry, talking about the craft writer. Well, you heard the question.
Don't make me embarrassed in front of these
See,
people.
that's what I gotta do. It never is, man.
He brings the song himself. The craft, I'm nice, I promise. He's just interesting. No. The crafting is very interesting. For me, with poetry, it depends. I feel like for me, when crafting my first book, a lot of it was even unknowingly, maybe a little bit knowingly, like I was in my MFA program. My book is a revised version of my thesis. So my professor was saying, hey, you write a lot about like family and kinship. Kinship meaning not just blood relation, but just of community. And I was writing a lot about New Orleans because Katrina happened when I was 10. So I feel like a lot of people, especially at that time, were asking adults how they were feeling, but not a lot of people were asking the children how they felt and how we felt, especially having to go to different schools and interacting with different cultures and things like that. So for me, I was just writing about Katrina because I was writing about a part of my childhood, and a big thing of it was Katrina because, sort of like what Blake said, like New Orleans, there is a pre and a post Katrina New Orleans, even the vibe is different when going to school pre-Katrina and just hanging out with friends, visiting family. Some people had to move away due to financial burdens. They couldn't come back. Some people's homes were, destroyed. So I feel like a big part of my crafting is something I call like a responsible empathy. I want to write honestly about people and places, but also to give them respect. So for me, a part of my crafting is on memory, but I'm a person who loves repetition and sonic choices, so I love sound in my work. So I like the form of the poem doesn't happen before the poem. The thing about poetry is this wonderful discovery. So I'm writing the poem and I think about the form of it later. But for me, I like to use words that I can repeat. And every time you repeat a word, it creates a new definition. People think when you repeat something it gets tiring, but I think you can transform it. So for me, I focus on sound and image. Like my bio said, I do screenwriting and I love film. Like when I was a kid, I liked to watch the behind the scenes version when people still watch DVDs. Now everything's streaming, but like the DVD, I would love to watch the behind the scenes option more than the play movie option. So I like tinkering with things, and I like image because I like movies and visuals.
I was just falling into so much time. I always talk about that. What's it, fat flounder? There it is. A fat flounder focusing on its living against the brown swamp of my face. There's so many F's and pulses. Alliteration, baby. Blake is going to respond in a moment. We're going to take some questions. We're going to have maybe time for one or two questions before we move. I'd be remiss. We start everybody else's books. I write books too.
This is not about you.
This is totally about it. This is my first book, We Cast the Shadow, came out in 2019. It did not win the Whiting Award, but it's a pretty good book. Is that a Trump person? Oh my goodness. This is my second book, which is a book of short stories. It's called The Ones of the 2021. It's 19 stories set here in the city of New Orleans. I like it. I think it's okay. And this is my latest book, The American Daughters, which is available for sale with Tubby and Coos outside. It's set in New Orleans in the 1850s and 60s. And what's weird about it, I was able to just walk in the French Quarter, it's the exact same buildings. So the setting was very much part of it, but it's still there. So there's that part of it. Blake, how do you want to jump in on this part about craft and how maybe the locality has influenced your craft?
I've always loved writing setting. It's a thing that I enjoy. And for a while I thought that it was about things like the buildings and about the food or what people were wearing. And it is those things. But I think it's also a set of attitudes and beliefs that you have to imbue your characters with somehow, so that on the page it appears like they're looking and thinking like people from here or from wherever.
Oh my goodness, Blake, I'm sorry, what's the name of the story in the collection where it's Manuel, who's from Mexico City, and his son is born in America? What's the name of that story?
Well, there's three that are...
That's right, they're interconnected stories.
Yeah.
But it's the one where he's he's having a hard time running his business, it's a struggle for him. And the mentality, I see what you're saying.
In the City of Murals is that story.
Yes, absolutely. It's a fantastic story. I didn't mean to cut you off, I just want to say, I really enjoyed the way that you brought the mentality through the character.
Yeah, I think that's really important. If you don't have that, then a lot of that other stuff that's more concrete feels like window dressing, I fear. Whereas if you have a voice that people can connect with, people feel is authentic to a place, then the story resonates usually a little bit more.
You know what often happens? Sometimes out-of-towners will come to the city to write books. And often it's like fantasy, like vampire books, something like that. And it's like they just will describe the cathedral or describe Anne Rice's, whatever it is, the cemeteries, and you're like, you didn't really spend any time here. You don't know this place.
Yeah, and then they have a really New England-ass sentence.
Absolutely. That's the perfect way to put it. Yeah. Larry, please.
Well, I have to give thanks where it belongs. Just to Dorman, can you stand up? She's with the Historic New Orleans Collection.
Thank you.
They are the ones that guided me through this process. Wow. I'll tell you, the fun of it was I wrote the first manuscript and I brought it over. Our office is in the French Quarter. And I decided, I'm done. This is it. I went out and got margaritas and got drunk. And then I got a phone call the next day and she said, look, we've got to correct this, that, and the other. And it's like, okay, 5 drafts later, we have a book. But that's my first book, and that's my last book. The reason for it is the memoir, which I'm hoping to celebrate my family. At the same time, the gay rights movement in America, which if these young kids don't stand up, they're gonna be back to where I was in the closet, praying to be straight, which I never wanted to be, I'm sure now, but back then it was the only access I had to a real life without being in prison. So I'm hoping that this book will take off. I have a lot of fans in Houston. My goal was to run for public office, and everybody started dying in Houston. I came home in '86 because of the AIDS crisis. And I came here and I ran for public office. They weren't ready for me.
There's an amazing picture of you. I think during the campaign, you're in like a second line in the car. I think your dad's driving the car. You're like in the back, you know, kind of up like that. Like, look at this. What's up, 1982 or something?
That was the St. Patrick's Day parade on Magazine Street.
Oh my goodness.
And I tell you what kind of father I had. I was so sick of them saying, how's it like being the first openly gay person? You left 30 years of business out of this picture. You left all the work I've done in the community. And all you want to talk is about is gay, gay, gay,
right.
gay, gay. This was 1990. So
1990.
people had just finished with that. So when my dad convinced me to do one more interview and went to my apartment with me to change, and we got back and the news reporters set up, this is in the old days, where they have the lights and the camera and all that. And the news report, the first thing out of my mouth was, how do you feel being the first open gay person running for public office? And my dad said, I can answer that for you. So that's the kind of dad I had, besides the kind of mom.
That's beautiful. And as you said in the book, you knew who you were when you were 4 years old. Like, you knew exactly who you were. So it's never a question.
I knew who I was when I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
I knew I was gay, and I knew I'd have a miserable life. And what convinced me not to have a miserable life was when I prayed real hard in this church and 9 others, and finally got the psychiatrist to say, take my $130, put it in the register and say, we can help you. We can give you a shock treatment program. And I thought, they're gonna burn my brain cells. And my mother saved me from special class, now I'm saving myself from getting brain damage. But that was the whole idea. No, I knew I was gay when I was 4.
All right, thank you. So, okay, we're going to open up to questions. We are really running out of time. Time always flies here with a panel like this. So, if somebody has a burning question, I see a hand back there. You can just shout it and I'll repeat it for the camera.
Yeah, hey, Maurice. So, this question is inspired by something that 2 of you said. Maurice, you mentioned that ICE is coming here tomorrow. And Larry, you mentioned, if I heard it right, that Texas in the 80s used to be Democrat, if I heard that correctly, which just blows me away. So my question for all of y'all is, how conscious are you of trying to address the current political situation in your writing, or is that even the author's responsibility?
Great, George, thank you. I think the camera got that. The camera's nodding, so whoever wants to respond, just hop in. Let's do a lightning round responses. Girl, show them. Oh, I'm sorry. So the question was, to be clear, the question was, how do you respond to the current politics in writing, if you respond to the politics?
I turned the TV off right after Trump got elected the second time. I script everything now to protect historic New Orleans collection. Luckily, I didn't have to read what I wrote, but I'm not staying out of politics. I'm just waiting for what happened 2 weeks ago when Democrats dropped the ball and they didn't do the right thing and keep it closed. Again, it's my opinion that they didn't keep the government closed until we squeezed these Republicans. I've dealt with them my whole life. Black people are lazy. Gay people, all they want to do is molest your children. The stuff they said about the restrooms, I could go on and on, but this is not the proper time to do that. This is not a political rally.
I wanted to, since I was Larry's publisher, and I'll just say, for the historic New Orleans collection, Larry may be watching what he says, but when he sent his manuscript to us, and it was back and shortly in Florida, and the Don't Say Gay, and so I'm not saying anything political per se, I'm just saying something human. We knew this was the book we wanted to publish and needed to publish, and we're never going to stop publishing stories like his.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to get a quick background, Larry was a lobbyist in Baton Rouge for about a decade, right?
For the Lillian Task Force for 10 years.
For the Noise Task
We
Force.
killed 167 negative bill, one which said if you assume a person was HIV positive, you could kill them and it would be justifiable homicide.
So you killed 160 billions.
167 negative HIV. They wanted to tattoo people with HIV. I was up there on behalf of the No AIDS Task Force.
Thank you for your work. Blake, do you have any responses? I did politics in the work.
I mean, I love writing about politics. I think politics is personal, and I think that's, if you're a writer, that's how you have to approach it. It's like, how does it affect people? How does it affect the characters that you create? And what scenarios? And as a writer, I always think about, like, I invent a character and then I try to put a character into a scenario. So if I want to write a political story, then I just make it a political scenario. I have a couple of stories in this book that are very politically charged, involve rallies in Mexico during a time of crisis and such. So I think it's really rich, but I think it comes with a great responsibility to do it in a way that encapsulates a larger set of concerns that people, both including your characters and the people outside of them, have about the world.
I'm a black woman from the South, so everything I do is viewed as political, so I don't think it's like, not that it's not a responsibility. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Okay, I won't say that, I'll say something else. I was gonna say, well, I'll say it anyway. I think it's mostly white people's responsibility because it's like, a lot of, well, depending on what the thing is, if it's racism or homophobia or anything else, I feel like it is the job of the oppressed to free ourselves, but also the people who may have more freedoms to do the work as well. But, I mean, I feel like, for example, I mean, I keep bringing up Katrina, but we're in New Orleans. Katrina was a political thing, you know? So many people who weren't helped were black people. So many people who were left in the Superdomes to die and to starve and things like that. But in general, I do feel like in my work, I kind of write about my life, which is inherently political, not by my own accord. Like, I didn't make my life political, but people who do not share the identity markers that I have make my life political. Even the way I wear my hair is political. So I feel like I write a lot about family, kinship, community. I live in a black community, that's political. I don't know, I feel like whether or not you write about something inherently political, it will be politicized. But I feel like, I don't know, I just want to write about people who are in love, whether it's romantic love, familial love, friendship love. I want to show people in their own community in the center of their story and not someone looking in.
Thank you for that.
Whatever Karisma just said was what I was going to say, honestly. But for me, like, the politics just reminds me of the urgency of writing, right? Not necessarily what I'm writing, not that I have to write about, you know, the politics, because yes, my life is political, right? But to the urgency of telling these stories is what spurs me on with what's going on. So I don't feel like I need to write about the politics, but just there's a feeling of like, yes, like we are kind of on borrowed time sometimes, you know, so it's like, let's get these stories out, let's write about our lives and all of that, you know.
All right, that's it, folks. We're out of time. Big hand for the panelists here. Thank you so much, everybody.